Challenge. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let's start because we have another workshop which will be starting at 1 also, so we are running short of time. Let me welcome all of you. It is my greatest pleasure to welcome all of you to this discussion and workshop. We are going to have two speakers today. The first one is going to be Dr. Suleiman Shahid. He is the director of LUMS Learning Institute and an assistant professor in computer sciences. His research interest includes assistive educational technologies, mobile apps, and VR/AR systems to enhance the quality of life of persons with cognitive learning disabilities. For example, autism, dyslexia, visual impairment, and older adults' educational technologies for children. For children, child-computer interaction and computing for well-being. More recently, he has become interested in information and communication technologies for development, where he takes a multidisciplinary approach for designing interventions in the areas of education and health. Over to Dr. Suleiman Shahid. Could you start the discussion? Well, yes, I will be introducing Dr. Arshad Ahmed. He will be doing the workshop on governance. Dr. Arshad Ahmed is the Vice Chancellor at LUMS right now. Before that, he was Vice Provost Teaching and Learning and Director of Macpherson Institute at McMaster University in Canada. He is also Chair of Teaching and Learning Canada, former President of Society for Teaching and Learning in Higher Education, and former Vice President of International Consortium of Educational Developers. Dr. Ahmed completed his MBA and later PhD in Educational Psychology at McGill University. He won a lifetime 3M National Teaching Fellowship Award in 1992 and was a professor of finance at Concordia and McMaster University. His research interests are in student evaluation of teaching, approaches to teaching, teaching philosophies, and student partnership. So first the half part of the seminar will be covered by Dr. Salman Shahid. So I really welcome Dr. Salman Shahid right now, and would you please start the discussion? And if I have missed something, you can add on to that.
Thank you. So I just want to be clear that we together had about an hour. We had to finish this presentation by 1 p.m., right? So what we agreed on is that Dr. Arshad would be starting the presentation. He'll be giving a high-level overview of the vision and the mission and how teaching and learning is happening at LUMS. And then in the second part, I'll be adding on, either in the conversation or, a few other slides if required to support, Dr. Arshad. So Dr. Arshad will be starting and I'll be supporting him in the next round. So we made a little change in the plan. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, Dr. Arshad, please go ahead and I'll support at the end then.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you so much for this invitation. I'm really delighted and honored to be part of this very esteemed group of leaders at your university. And the truth is that we don't do enough collaborations institutionally, and so to see this happen really gladdens me, and I'm very happy that you are you've taken the time to set this up and all the organization that went behind. So I congratulate and thank all of you. Before I make a formal presentation, I thought I'd just talk a little bit on the helicopter view, high-level points that will contextualize my talk, which I hope you received some not homework, but some preparatory material that was sent. There were two articles sent to you, one on student evaluations and another one on a chapter that is to appear that talks about institutional leadership and making teaching count. So I've titled my presentation as Making Teaching Count, and I'll explain that in a moment. Let me begin by asking everyone a question. And I'm assuming everyone can type in their answer in the chat box. So if you're not sure how to do that, just familiarize yourself and make sure that chat box is open. So I'm just going to ask a open question, and I'd like you to type in one word as your response. And the question is as follows. When we think about a university in higher education, there are many stakeholders involved, right? There are students, staff, there's, of course, faculty, administrators, there are alumni, there are donors, there are parents, there are many community, there's the state, and so on. It's a long list. So my question is this. If you had to choose one as the most important stakeholder in the university, who would it be? Aap ye likh lein in the chat box. Who would be the most important stakeholder in your mind as far as the university is concerned? Okay, we've got head of academic units, students. Let's keep going. More students. Glad to see students there, of course. Without them, we would not exist. Who else? Parents of those students and family, yes. So, I see Imran Saab, thank you for mentioning faculty. You know, often when I attend a lot of these meetings with the vice chancellors and with other leadership, often they say, you know, the most tough job, the most important job is the vice chancellor's job or the provost's job. ये बड़ा मुश्किल काम है, इसमें बहुत अहम, you know, ये करना होता है, वो करना होता है. तो ये बात तो सब सही है, लेकिन मेरे ख्याल में there is no more important job. There's nobody as important as the faculty member. And I tell you why. It's very simple. Because if you look at any mission of any university, anywhere in the world, irrespective of culture, context, location, geography, you know, what are we out there to do? We are out there to create knowledge, and we are out there to disseminate it. And who does that? Vice Chancellor does not do that. Neither does the student. Neither does the parent. It's the faculty member that does that. Puri productivity, jo jad hai, the core mission of the university rests on faculty. Now, that doesn't mean that we ignore all the other stakeholders. Everybody has to play a very critical role. But let's not forget कि जो ड्राइवर है, प्रोडक्टिविटी ड्राइवर जो है वो फैकल्टी मेंबर्स हैं और उन पे हमें तवज्जो हर वक्त देनी पड़ती है. या रिसर्च की बात करें, या टीचिंग की बात करें, या सर्विस की बात करें, यही तीन चीजें करते हैं हम मिलके. लेकिन इनमें से जो अहम है रिसर्च एंड टीचिंग, that is done by faculty. So I just wanted to put that context in place first and focus on what faculty are expected to do and what kind of systems do we have that allow us to carry on our missions. Okay, so let me share my presentation if I have sharing. Oh, I need to be enabled to share my screen, please. So if the host can do that, I would appreciate it. So I have some slides, a dozen slides that I'm going to go over very quickly, and I'd like to keep this forum open. I was hoping we'd have a conversation more than just one-way presentation. So I'm hoping Suleiman will definitely add to this conversation. He has a lot to say. He's our director of the Learning Institute, your counterpart for Center for Teaching and Learning. But mostly love to hear about, mostly love to hear from you about your own thoughts for this particular talk. So hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, so the title, as I mentioned, is Making Teaching Count. Now, why did I choose teaching when we know research is obviously in play and so is service? So let me talk about that a little bit. But they came, first of all, if we focus on research and teaching, which are really the drivers for the university, and look at if we look at the excellence framework for research, and I'm not talking about a university, I'm talking generalizing here, around the world, various regions, of course, they differ. There's a lot of variation, but the legs on which research excellence stands on are really three most important things. One of them is a system of peer evaluation. And this is, you know, how it goes. Department mein hota hai peer evaluation, school mein hota hai, faculty mein hota hai, phir uske baad, then you have, of course, evaluations done at the international level, you have peers from outside who examine your work and comment on the standards that you're aspiring to. And the university does that. And then it goes through up to the chief academic officer, to the vice chancellor, and then to the board of governors. So the peer evaluation system is one of the secret sources of success for research excellence because it's global. And by and large, people understand the concept of it, although it's applied quite differently from one place to another. Then you look at the way in which the evaluation occurs. It's actually quite clean in the sense that it's considered objective. You can look at metrics that are quite reliable, such as reputable journals, the editorial boards of those journals, the impact factors, the citation counts, and so on and so forth. So ye bhi kafi established over time, ye jad lag gayi hai iski. And then those are the standards we aspire to, whatever they might be. And then let's not forget that any aspiration of any program must be sustained financially. And here we have all kinds of systems in play. We have university startup grants, we have research grants, we have competitive grants regionally, provincially, nationally, and internationally. So there is this fuel to do the work of research through the granting system that exists. And the more the government participates in giving money for that system, the more this system thrives. Okay. So if we can agree that this system works, in fact, it is the currency, it is the most legitimized way in which faculty find themselves progressing in their careers. Research is pretty much well defined. Now let's look at teaching. When we look at teaching, it's not well defined, it's ill defined, and it's messy. And people don't really know what others are expecting from them to be measured up in terms of their merit, their promotion, their tenure, and so on and so forth. So I thought, how do we make that happen? And in which universities have they made this happen? What are the essential elements for that to work? So I've chosen 5 here to focus on 5 things. And you can see them bolded here. One of them are student evaluations or course evaluation student ratings that are common around the world. And I'm sure it's done at UMT as it is at LUMS. Then we have a scattergun of teaching award programs. Some are disciplinary, some are at a faculty level or school level, and some are at the university. Some are even regional and national award programs. Then we have centers like yours and ours, which are providing a service, but they're also providing, I think, a basis for scholarship, and I'll talk about that. And that leads to the point number 4 about legitimizing research on teaching itself. And that is known as the Scholarship for Teaching and Learning. So I'll talk about that a little bit. And then, of course, the heart of it, I think the most powerful signal is how clear and visible are your tenure and promotion policies that set up the expectations and then allow a pathway for people who choose. Okay, teaching excellence is going to be the way they want to spend their career in. ठीक है, जैसे research का है. अब ये नहीं है कि mutually exclusive है. Of course, you can do both, and you're encouraged to do both. In fact, you're encouraged to also do service. But let's find the interplay of this. Let's find a nexus where all of this can work. But you have to have, in my opinion, these legs for teaching excellence to stand. Now, just before I proceed, student ratings. In fact, I'll go ahead and talk about student ratings, the first item. देखिए, फिलहाल आप खुद काउंट करें अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी में कितने लोग प्रमोट होते हैं on the basis, on the criteria of teaching excellence. And my challenge to you is you will be able to count those people on your fingertips. बहुत कम. Most people do not go up for promotion, especially tenure. They do not go up for tenure on the basis of teaching. They go up on the basis of research. But why should that be? Why can't we have, people making that choice and saying, I'll fulfill the minimum expectation for research, But what I want you to look at is the excellent work that I've done in teaching. Now, we do have some cases where this happens, and universities elsewhere, this does happen, although it's infrequent. But when you look at the way we are doing it right now, it's actually, bewildering is the right word for in my mind. क्यों? इसलिए वो जो डोसिये में आप देखें कि एविडेंस क्या है टीचिंग एक्सेलेंस का, वो लोग लिख देते हैं कि भाई excellent teacher had a 4.3 rating and a 5-point scale over these courses, and therefore this person is excellent. Really? Is that going to be enough? And actually, that's how far it typically goes. अब ये आप scale को देखें, the 5-point Likert scale that is typically used in the evaluation forms, in many places, 4 is actually an average. It's not above average, it's average. 4.3 suddenly becomes excellent. तो इनकी calibration जो है, और ये evaluation instrument जो है, is it a reliable instrument? Is it a valid instrument? Is it something that is measuring satisfaction, or is it measuring learning? And I would argue it's measuring satisfaction. It's not measuring learning. Now, so you might even say, and a lot of studies in this paper that we wrote recently that was published, that you see before you, we look at the literature on student evaluations over 40 years, and you find that this is a very dubious measure. I mean, itni isme difficulties hai, itni biases hai, measurement problems hai, कि you cannot reliably say by looking at one number कि आपको पता लग गया ये excellent है या नहीं है, या ये average है या नहीं है, ये तक पता नहीं है. तो फिर ये सवाल पैदा होता है कि ये इस्तेमाल करें या नहीं करें. तो मेरे ख्याल में इस्तेमाल करना बहुत ज़रूरी है, बहुत ज़रूरी है, as one data point. ये नहीं कि इसको फिर throw the baby out with the bathwater. इसको you have to contextualize this as a means to do a lot of other things. And I say that with the following analogy for you to think about. देखिए, if we ask students to submit work for us, हम उनको assignments देते हैं, midterms देते हैं, final exams देते हैं, और भी चीजें, experiential work देते हैं. अगर हम ये बोलें कि आप ये काम तो करें, हम जो आपको assign कर रहे हैं, लेकिन हम आपको evaluate नहीं करेंगे. तो फिर without assessment, we will not know whether the students learned what we intended them to learn. So assessment is critical. In the same way, when a teacher is facing students, you must ask the students, did you learn? आपने क्या सीखा है? किस तरह सीखा है? किस तरह आपका, how have you changed? What were the things that made a difference to you, and so on and so forth. So you have to get the feedback. Now, the question is, are you going to use the feedback to improve, or are you going to use the feedback to judge? And this is where the difficulty lies. When you ask faculty members, do you want to be evaluated? And I tell you, most of the literature says, yes, they want to be evaluated. They want feedback, but they don't want to be judged. Why? Because they don't feel that students who are 17, 18, or 19 years old can really do justice in trying to capture the complex phenomena of learning through an evaluation form. And that is, fairly common amongst people. So, iska maqsad jo hai, hame phir dekhna chahiye कि how are we using these student ratings? Because they can be very useful. And we present here a case study in Sweden at Lund University, where student evaluations have become a pipeline for conversations about teaching, for interventions about teaching, for specific data they collect and write about on teaching, and then put that together in a dossier to be rewarded for teaching. So systems हैं इसकी, और उसकी जड़ जो है student ratings है. So we need to really think again about the, I would say, misuse of student evaluations, and yet bring them in the forefront for the purposes they are intended to serve, which is feedback. चलें, let's go to the second one, awards. अच्छा, अब मैं खुशखबरी आपको जरा दे दूं, इसलिए ये पिछले हफ्ते ही हमने पहली दफा, after 32 years, for the first time, LUMS University has an institutional, university-wide टीचिंग एक्सेलेंस अवार्ड, ठीक है। और हमने ये सोचा कि एक को नहीं देंगे, 5 को, अप टू 5 को देंगे। क्यों? इसलिए कि ये खुद एक कम्युनिटी बन जाएगी। 5 साल बाद 25 लोग होंगे, 10 साल बाद 50 लोग होंगे। ये लीडर्स हैं हमारे, ये सबको टेन्योर मिल सकता है। ये इतने ऊंचे स्टैंडर्ड पे पढ़ाते हैं और इन्होंने इस तरह का एविडेंस दिया है हमें कि वी आर कंपेल्ड to recognize them as permanent faculty. We want these people. Why? Because they in the curriculum, in innovations, in using technology, and the list goes on and on. So this is a dossier of 10 pages that people submit. And we had 34 nominations out of a faculty of 300 people. That is considerable. कि इतने सारे लोगों को लोगों ने nominate किया, और फिर they have to present, they're nominated. It's not self-nomination, they are nominated by someone. There is a statement of teaching philosophy they have to write, and most of the application is based on the evidence of innovation and the impact they have had. And यहाँ पर बहुत मुख्तलिफ practices हैं जो हम उनकी मिसाल देते हैं उनको, और उनको शुरू में बोलते हैं आप टीचिंग लर्निंग इंस्टीट्यूट में जाके लोगों से बातें करें, उनसे पूछें किस तरह ये प्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं, किस तरह ये डेटा गैदर कर सकते हैं, और इसमें जरूर इंक्लूड करें स्टूडेंट रेटिंग, लेकिन दैट्स अ पीस ऑफ इट. And then of course letters of support, and everyone is eligible for this award. So I'm just delighted to show you that we have winners here from the law school, from the School of Science and Engineering, from the humanities and social sciences, and inshallah और भी लोग मुख्तलिफ जमा होंगे as time goes by. Now, here's the real deal about awards. If you set a standard that is very high, automatically you are serving the university in terms of establishing what makes teaching count. This is a great example of how holistically you can look at a person's contributions to teaching excellence. And so awards should not be just a line item in a CV. They should be the basis on which you form your tenure and promotion policies. कि excellence के ये मायने होते हैं. They look like this. ये इस तरह के लोग हैं जो हम we are going to not only recognize, but we are going to reward them. We are going to give them permanence. We are going to give them promotions. We are going to give them resources. And that is what makes the award count. Not just कि आपने लगा दिया, seniority है, बंदा है, कोई बहुत research कर गए हैं, बहुत उनकी prestige है, तो उनको ये भी award दे देते. इस तरह के भी award systems हैं. लेकिन we must be very careful about establishing the standards for this award. Chale, let's go to the next one, which I think will interest you the most, because this is what we do at the Learning Institute. By the way, all these slides are Suleiman slides, so I've stolen them. And so I'm speaking on behalf of Suleiman here. And Suleiman, jump in if I miss something. So iske 4 hisse hain. Again, a learning institute, we've chosen the word institute instead of a center for a very simple reason, because we don't think a center is like, a pure service place. It's not a bookstore. It's not a library. It's not a place where you go and eat food. It's an institute because it's quasi-scholarly and quasi-service. तो यहाँ पर support services भी हैं, लेकिन यहाँ पर scholarship भी होती है. तो ये इस तरह हमने, that's why we were careful to define it as a place which is a sort of halfway in between something that's granting certificates and producing scholarly work, and then of course supporting faculty for faculty development. And that's the first of the 4 areas which our institute works on. So the Learning Institute focuses on faculty development, and here you can see all the types of services, workshops on instructional skills training, the online version of that, the how to design your courses, both online and otherwise. And then, people talk about these things and they say, हम ये करेंगे, हम ये करेंगे, हम ये करेंगे. आप जरूर करें, लेकिन अब जब कर रहे हो आप, फिर बताएं कि क्या हो रहा है. So this is where you see here the instructional skills implementation course. That's the 3rd, 4th bullet. And here you have people actually taping interventions in their classroom, and then they get feedback from other people when they take this particular workshop. So this is a very practical kind of practice-based focus on improvement, that these kinds of webinars, seminars, and so on occur under faculty development. Okay, let's go to the next three parts of this. The second part is something that has been forgotten, I think, quite a bit, that you cannot engage in any teaching intervention unless and until your audience, which are your students, become your partners. Okay, this is a very different, philosophically different view than saying that they are clients or that they are customers. They haven't come to the university to shop or to buy something. They are there as our, I would say, one of the most important partnerships that we have actually is in research with students. So why don't they co-write articles with us? Why don't they co-design courses with us? Why don't they collect data and present that in conferences with us? So they become co-designers, co-authors, co-presenters. And that's what partnerships are about. So we have engaged in a university-wide partnership program, and you can see some of those happy partners on the Zoom window that you see. अच्छा, इसका तीसरा हिस्सा क्या है? अब वो कोविड की वजह से ये बिल्कुल एम्पलीफाई भी हो गया है कि we cannot conduct our business if we don't start understanding the medium of online and blended learning. So uske liye the institute provides some vital resources like this. I would call this a world-class studio that we constructed at LUMS. यहाँ पर green screens हैं, यहाँ पर teleprompters हैं, हर तरह का equipment है, so you can make asynchronous courses, you can make modules, you can do all kinds of things here, and this becomes a way in which you actually, the technology is just a medium to help you get bigger audiences. So people who couldn't get into a LUMS program, for example, or a UMT program, they can still learn through continuing education or through other ways in which courses are made for the general public, right? So we want to be inclusive, we want to be accessible, and technology provides that vehicle, and it also provides flexibility to students. There's no reason for students to take all courses in person. There are some courses much better served online, as there are, of course, all kinds of advantages of hybrid and in-person classes. So that's the effort for number 3. Number 4, as I was mentioning earlier on, which is a section on its own in making teaching count, is to say that the research that we do, the research that we are trained for, which is our disciplinary research. अब देखें, मैंने जो in my own experience, you know, a lot of my training was in business. So I did an MBA, then I did an accounting degree, and then I taught for a long time in a business school. I taught finance. I created courses in that. I wrote books on it and so on. And then I thought that maybe there was another area that I could excel in, and I went towards psychology because a lot of finance already was going towards that particular area. It wasn't, you know, as much as a science as it was a social science. And so my expertise was branched out into educational psychology and cognitive psychology and so on and so forth. The point is that, you know, when you are doing research in a discipline, whether it is education, whether it is business or what have you, तो उनकी disciplinary traditions होती हैं, उनकी disciplinary conventions होती हैं, and that's fine. But what unites all of these disciplines is the way we disseminate our work. Yani, the common denominator is learning. In all the disciplines, people are learning. But what do we know about learning? This is the most complex question facing human beings. From parents right until educators. How do our children learn? So the opportunities to do the scholarship on teaching and learning is immense, and it has proliferated. So if you Google SoTL, you will find thousands of journals. You will find international conferences, associations like the International Society for the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. or SoTL. Check it out. You'll find fantastic conferences, global conferences that go around the world. And this is a movement that is taking a lot of hold, and it needs to be recognized within the discipline. It needs to be recognized at the university. And here you can also engage your students in that scholarship. So I show you some examples here of some of our professors working with students, students leading those publications. And that's what this is all about. Okay, so this whole area was about what a center can do or what an institute can do. And that takes me to the last point, if I may. Oh, you mentioned earlier on about the newsletter. I hope you have a chance to review it. This again is a labor of love that came out from the Institute. Credit to Suleiman and all the colleagues working there for the kind of things that we've been doing. This center is only a year and a half old. And so it's remarkable how much work has been done, and kudos to all the people who are leading it. And I hope once again, we can collaborate on inter-institutional work that our centers do. चलें, आखिरी चीज, सबसे अहम चीज, और वो है, the signal that really catches the attention of the faculty. कि मेरा रास्ता क्या है? What choices do I have? What is the university affording me in terms of my calling? There are some people who join the academy because they want to teach. And there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong in that. So why aren't we thinking about those people who came and joined the university because they want to improve as teachers so that they can improve student learning, right? So now when you look at the documents, let's dig into a document. मैं आपको कहता हूँ खुद अपने documents देखें. आपके जो tenure promotion documents हैं, उसको जरा पढ़ें आप, गौर से पढ़ें. उसमें क्या लिखा होगा? उसमें टीचिंग एक्सेलेंस का जरूर लिखा होगा, और वो लैंग्वेज इस तरह की यूज होती है जो सब खुश हो जाते हैं देख के. हाँ, इसके तो ये it's kind of motherhood vision mission statement language, but it's dense language. It doesn't help the faculty member to say, अच्छा अगर मैं इस तरह की चीजें करूं, अगर मैं एक किताब लिखूं टीचिंग एंड लर्निंग पे, या मैं सॉटल टाइप ऑफ वर्क करूं, या मैं स्टूडेंट पार्टनरशिप्स एनकरेज करूं, या मैं करिकुलम में इनोवेट करूं, तो इससे विल दैट काउंट? ये नहीं लिखा हुआ होता है डॉक्यूमेंट्स में. ये आपको खुद पता करना होता है और चांस लेनी होती है. अब देखिए, रिसर्च में ये नहीं है. रिसर्च में आपको फौरन बता देंगे ये जर्नल्स हैं, ये आपके हम ये ग्रेड्स को मानते हैं, इसके नीचे नहीं मानते. टीचिंग में कुछ नहीं बताते. तो फिर यही होता है कि टीचिंग वाले जो बहुत दिल से इसका अपना साथ ले जाना चाहते हैं वो करेंगे जरूर, और जो 90% हैं वो चीजें देखेंगे that is going to reduce the uncertainty, and they know what they'll be evaluated on. So what I suggest is, and what we are doing at LUMS, is we are making the implicit explicit, and we're doing that by choosing some criteria. So we've had many meetings with people like yourselves. We've had meetings with deans, with directors, with HODs, and said कि देखें, हमने ये दुनिया के experts को बुलाया है और उनसे पूछा है कि दुनिया में किस तरह करते हैं. उन्होंने बताया कि भाई ये बहुत से मॉडल्स देखे, कनाडा के मॉडल्स देखे, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के देखे, यूरोप में और मुख्तलिफ जगहों के देखे, यूएस में देखे. And we chose these 7 criteria. मिलके किया. ये नहीं कि ऊपर से छलांग लगा दी. We just asked them, and after discussion we came up with these 7 criteria. So I'm just going to look at 2 of them to give you what we mean by making the implicit explicit. So the first one says design and planning of learning activities. The second one says teaching and supporting student learning, and it goes on. Assessment pe hai. Developing effective learning environments पे है, integration of scholarship, research and professional activities इस पे है कि आप discovery का काम सिर्फ नहीं है, application का काम सिर्फ नहीं है, लेकिन integration का भी काम है. इसलिए इतनी knowledge है उधर. आजकल तो सबके हाथों पे इतनी knowledge है, इसको आप किस तरह integrate करते हैं, किस तरह समझते हैं. So that's point number 5. And then the evaluation of practice and continuing professional development. आप किस तरह बेहतर हो रहे हैं. अगर आपको promote होना है तो आप इधर थे तो उधर कैसे चले गए. अगर आपने शुरू किया था आपके course evaluations ज़्यादा अच्छे नहीं थे तो आपके ये किस तरह बेहतर हुए. What interventions has made learning more important. और हर वक्त student learning focuses on learning, not on the teacher but on the student. And then of course professional and personal effectiveness. So if we look at the first two on the design and planning of learning activities, what is the indicator for that? The indicator is well-planned learning activities designed to develop student learning. So what does that mean? Well, that means a description of something innovative that you're doing. Are you using case-based teaching, experiential-based teaching? Are you using inquiry-based teaching? And what are the strategies that you use within those approaches that help students to learn? Or you could be doing surveys to collect some data to say कि आपने ये intervention किया है, उसका ये फायदा हुआ है over this period of time. आपने कोई lesson plan बताया है जिससे highly interactive है, जो students बहुत engage हो जाते हैं और उनको फिर आप रोक नहीं सकते हैं सीखने में. आपने किस तरह उनकी आग लगाई है, to use that metaphor. A particular assignment, a description of that, a way in which you assessed people, a grading rubric, and maybe some other learning resources. So these are very specific, and they're saying कि अगर आप इस तरह की चीजें करेंगे, तो हम आपको recognize करेंगे, and they will count. ठीक है? If we look at the second example for teaching and supporting student learning, so what are some techniques? So here we go from strategy to technique. ठीक है? अब वो उसके अंदर आपकी जो belief system है कि किस तरह लोग सीखते हैं, आप उस पे लिखें. और इस पे इतना काम हुआ है, as mentioned earlier on, this is a research area. I have looked at more teaching philosophy statements than I think anyone maybe in Pakistan, because I've been doing that for 35 years. I have been on national teaching award committees. I've been on personnel committees. And now, of course, at LUMS, I look at all of the promotion dossiers. So I look at these philosophies, and there are good philosophies, there are very good philosophies, and they're very poorly written philosophies. तो इसके भी developmental stages होते हैं, तो लोग इसको भी बेहतर कर सकते हैं. So you have teaching philosophy statements, you have some kind of formative assessments कि रास्ते में course आपका यहाँ शुरू हुआ, यहाँ खत्म होगा, आप बीच में देखें कौन सी milestones हैं जहाँ पर लोग सीख रहे हैं, उसका feedback लें और इसको document करें. Of course, student ratings, qualitative and quantitative, इस पे भी बड़ी debates हुई हैं. हमने खुद लम्स में अपना questionnaire change कर दिया है. पता नहीं 25 सवाल थे या 30 सवाल थे शुरू में जो 5 दफा students were filling out in a period of 4 days. It just doesn't make sense that you ask students to fill out hundreds of questionnaires. अब वो आंखें बंद करके लगते हैं. अब वो कहते हैं कि भाई इससे कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. अगर कोई ट्रस्ट नहीं हो स्टूडेंट्स के साथ कि आप उनको एक इंस्ट्रूमेंट दे रहे हैं और वो आंखें बंद करके कह रहे हैं हाँ मुझे ये पसंद है सबको ये मैं 5 5 5 5 5 दे देता हूँ, नहीं मुझे ये पसंद नहीं है इनको 1 1 1 1 1, ये तरीका नहीं है ना. Nobody wants that, but that is what is happening in many universities, and so we need to look at that and we need to make changes to gain trust and say these ratings count. Because we will discuss these ratings. We will talk about them, we will change them, we will make them public. This is another thing we are doing, is making all teaching evaluations public. Acha. Teaching observation. You have to have peers look at your teaching. इसके अंदर कोई कमी नहीं है. You can bring peers from your discipline, across disciplines. You can bring experts from the institute. And this is where it becomes better and better. And I've already talked about teaching awards. So you can understand here that, this discussion about merit, tenure, and promotion has a lot of scope. इसमें अगर काम करें अपनी university में, I think this is the route to which you can make teaching count. It has to become the excellence framework has to become a core, क्या कहते हैं, part of what the university stands for. So I'm just recapping here the 5 things I just talked about. And if you want to think more about this, there is another article I included, a chapter of a book that is coming out that talks about many of these things in more detail. Especially there's a section on institutional leadership that I wrote that might interest you. So I'll stop there and ask either Suleiman to add to what I've said and then open it up for questions to everyone.
I think, Dr. Arshad, we have 12 minutes, so I think we can open up for questions. You have covered most of the points quite comprehensively, so I'll be happy to add more points in the discussion.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Suleiman. So colleagues, please go ahead. Comments and questions are welcomed.
Sir, if you may allow me.
Ji, zarur.
Ji, thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful presentation. I'm Nadia Anwar, and I'm chairing the Department of English at UMT. There are so many questions that I want to ask, but of course, I need to really prioritize my questions. Since you have put a lot of focus on teaching, and of course, teachers are definitely the most important stakeholders. My question is that when we talk about teaching track and research track, why do we normally do not categorize the research track? Because research, by default, every teacher does research. It's not just about getting yourself published in research articles. It's also about doing research in your own teaching, updating it, updating the content, and including latest pedagogies, and so on. So why is there so less an emphasis on the research that goes into teaching? Because I think it's rather easier to become a researcher than to become a good teacher. So I would like to have your opinion on that.
Thank you for the question. I'm just trying to understand the question properly. So when you say everybody does research, what do you mean by that? Do you mean peer-reviewed published research, or do you mean just inquiry?
No, sir. Actually, my point is that there are different categories of becoming a researcher. Normally, what we understand by going into research track is that we are producing research articles in research journals. And so we have been able to get ourselves published in impact factor journals, get citations, and become good researchers. But then there is another kind of research, that is pedagogical research. So I'm talking about that pedagogical research, which is not counted, although a lot of hard work goes into that. Because since it is not published and it is not visible as such, so less emphasis is given to that criteria of research that goes into teaching. So what should be done in order to enhance its impact, both for the teacher and for the institute as well?
Right. So first of all, I think we have to keep the distinction of when we define research, when we talk about research, quote unquote, I mean, yes, loosely speaking, every time you ask a question and every time you are trying to get some information, you're doing research. But that's not how we define research in the university system, right? We define research as an idea, a question that you've taken from, based on which you collect some data, qualitative or quantitative, it doesn't matter, or both. And then you have a jury of peers who evaluate it and say, कि हाँ आपने कुछ contribute किया है या नहीं किया है. I mean, you can't just claim every idea to be a good idea. Some are good, some are not. Some are implementable, some are not. So इसमें तो बहुत scope है ना. So that's the point I was trying to make about doing research on teaching. So ये research on teaching जो है, it's the same standards as research in a disciplinary manner. इसमें कोई फर्क नहीं है. उतनी journals भी बहुत respectable journals हैं in which you can publish your pedagogical research and so on. But your point about the other factors, the other aspects of teaching are very important. So I'm not discounting them. I'm saying those two need to be made clear कि लोगों को पता हो कि आप वैल्यू क्या करते हैं इंस्टीट्यूशन में, आप डिपार्टमेंट में क्या वैल्यू करते हैं. अगर किसी ने कोई इनोवेशन किया है तो वो इनोवेशन को आप वैल्यू करेंगे या नहीं. अगर कोई करिकुलम पे काम किया है, आप ये इसको मानेंगे या नहीं मानेंगे, या आप इसको सर्विस कह रहे हैं या आप इसको टीचिंग कह रहे हैं. तो ये जो बाउंड्रीज हैं फिलहाल, दे आर वेरी वेरी लेट्स से कंफ्यूजिंग फॉर फैकल्टी मेंबर्स, स्पेशली यंग फैकल्टी मेंबर्स. सो दे डोंट डू दिस काइंड ऑफ वर्क एंड दे से कि ठीक है टेन्योर मिल जाएगा, फिर बाद में हम जाके इस तरह की चीजें करेंगे. मेरा आर्ग्यूमेंट ये है कि जब आप शुरू करते हैं एकेडमी में काम, आपको किसी को मना नहीं करना चाहिए कि आप करिकुलम वर्क नहीं करें शुरू में. किसी को मना नहीं करना चाहिए कि आप अपनी पढ़ाने के जो तरीके हैं वो आप खुद सीखें, कि आप किस तरह पढ़ाएंगे, आपकी स्ट्रेटजीज क्या हैं, आपकी फिलॉसफी क्या है, आपके टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ वाकफियत, यू नो, व्हाट डू यू नो and what do you want to learn. So these things have to be documented, they have to be peer reviewed, they have to be explained by your peers कि देखें इस तरह का काम हम चाहते हैं आपसे. तो अगर वो पता हो तो लोग करेंगे, अगर पता नहीं हो तो फिर सब people are shooting darts and a lot of people actually don't do the work because it doesn't count. So that's why we have this kind of disparity whereas we should not be. So my argument is that both should be valued, and that this is a culture that we inculcate within our institutions from the get-go.
Thank you very much, sir. That's very helpful. Allow me for another little question. You talked about students getting these surveys at the end of the semesters where they have to answer a lot of questions, several questions, and they just blindly click on the options and then they're done with it. So do you think that in the beginning of the semesters we need to have some training for the students in order to actually let them know about each point that will be instrumental at the end of the semester when they are giving feedback for what they have learned and how to assess their teachers?
Gee, thank you for that question. To be very honest with you, I don't think the students need to be taught anything. They understand these questions very well. The questions are not hard. It's just that if you're asking 30 questions 5 times in a week, people are going to, first of all, there'll be some fatigue factor there, right? But more importantly, the reason that these evaluations are discounted by students is because they don't believe in them. They don't believe that you will be reading them or you'll be doing anything about it, especially for the poor ratings. वो कहते हैं कि वही जो पढ़ा रहा था 10 साल से वही पढ़ाता रहेगा, हम जो भी लिखते हैं यहाँ पर कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. तो अगर फर्क नहीं पड़ता है तो दे आर राइट. तो आपको फिर या तो वो इवैल्यूएशंस को कैलिब्रेट करके समझ के उससे you do something about it or you don't, right? So हम जो unfortunately करते हैं, जो बुरे टीचर्स हैं हमारे, उनको हम कोने में ले जाके कहते हैं आप डॉक्टर के पास चले जाएं, डॉक्टर आपको फिक्स कर देगा, फिर वापस आ जाएं. ये कोई तरीका नहीं है मेरे ख्याल में. यानी बल्कि I remember I used to work in a university where the center for teaching was known to fix faculty. I mean, what a horrible mandate to have. कि भाई आपका center which is supposed to promote learning is fixing faculty. That is a terrible, kind of thing to think about. But the idea here is to be able to take students as partners in this enterprise. से उनसे बोले देखिए आपका feedback बहुत लाजमी है, लेकिन अब ये feedback जो आप देंगे, जब ये feedback हमें मिलेगा, एक तो public होगा, right? And then फिर let's sit down with the student representative. The teacher should have a meeting, an informal meeting, and say कि देखिए आपको किस तरह से हम बेहतर पढ़ा सकते हैं. अगर वो बोले कि देखिए आप इस तरह के हमें स्लाइड्स दे रहे हैं जो हम देख नहीं सकते हैं, या आप हमें इतना बोर कर देते हैं इस चीजों में, तो you have to respond to that. And when you respond to it in a positive way, because they're giving you feedback, they are not judging you, they're giving you feedback. So मैं बार बार ये कहता हूँ कि the real help of the evaluation is to have a good relationship with students, as you do when you give them feedback. I mean, They don't hate you because you give them a D or you give them a low mark. You give them for your reasons, and they're doing the same thing. But we don't use that data productively. We use that data blindly. We use that data without talking about it. So इसमें conversations की बहुत ज़रूरत है. जब आपको अच्छा feedback मिलता है, बुरा feedback मिलता है, आपको बातें करनी बहुत ज़रूरी है. कि teachers must talk with students, teachers must talk with other teachers, teachers must use that data to make changes. That's the essence of what these, I believe, evaluations can do.
Thank you, sir.
Most welcome. Mohammed Saab. Mohammed Shaban?
Yeah, thank you so much. This is Shaban, and I am chair at the Department of Linguistics and Communication. It's a wonderful listening to your, wonderful ideas, and I really appreciate the way that you have summarized so many things. I like Dr. Nadia, I want to ask so many things, but just one because my other colleagues would like to ask questions as well. I was just thinking about the external factors, especially I agree, like teaching counts, it matters a lot. When we join a university, any private university like LUMS, we have to become a part of the productive cycle, and that productive cycle, one is a teaching, another is a research, and there are many other things in the queue, and we are supposed to be really angel to produce best of the best and perform excellent in all those positions. My question is especially relating to time higher education, QS ranking. So these are always, these external agencies are on the mind of higher administration, university administration, and their rubrics, and they look at us from that perspective, from that angle. So what weightage should be given to which component in the university education, like research or teaching or experimentation or further like curriculum development? So how you see at LUMS? So are you also taking into account time higher education, QS ranking, while you're working on student feedback and improving overall the image of your university? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. And by the way, you're always welcome to invite me back. If there are more questions, you want more discussion, I'll be happy to join you again. So to answer this particular question, Shaban Saab, dekhen, and this is just telling you like it is, with all the honesty and humility that I can muster. I don't really pay attention to rankings from Times Higher Ed or QS. If the rankings happen to, give us some good news, I'll celebrate them and I thank them for it. I'm not going to chase rankings, and I've made that very clear to all of our deans and others. This is a game which has many, many holes in it. So it has a lot of good, it does, to your reputation. And people devote a lot of resources institutionally to rankings. There are, I don't know how many hundreds of crores of rupees that are spent to satisfy the ranking masters. And believe me, having been part of other research-intensive universities, the stakes become higher and higher and higher, and we forget our purpose, and we start then trying to satisfy a criteria imposed by external ranking authorities that really have very little to do with our own directions and our own philosophy. So the short answer to your question is, I don't really care what these rankings say. We know what we are doing. We don't need assessors from QS and Times, and I can find so many flaws in their methodologies. And a lot of it is tilted towards quantifiable research metrics, which a lot of the weightings go there. And a lot of it is based on who knows who. यानी ये सर्वेस जो होती हैं, they ask me कि what do you think of UMT? अगर मैं उनको अच्छा लिखूंगा, आपकी रैंकिंग बेहतर हो जाएगी. So there's a lot of sort of networks that are engaged here, and there are. I don't want to say that this is really terrible. We shouldn't have rankings. I don't say that, but I don't try and pretend for a moment that this is our mission to improve our ranking. No, no. अगर होता है तो होए. अब हमें रैंक किया है उन्होंने, AACSB is accreditation body, वो भी रैंक करते हैं. उसके through, I mean, that accreditation counts for the ranking. And a lot of people say, let's get this accreditation so we can get a better rank. No, get the accreditation so you can have a better quality business program. And you know, so a lot of these filters that are used by rankings may coincide with your own standards, and that's good. But if it doesn't, I would discourage universities from this rankings game. You saw some of the rankings of Pakistani universities by Times Higher Ed. Go figure that out. Ji, Dr. Fariha.
Ji sir, Assalamu alaikum. This is chairperson of City and Regional Planning Department. So, sir, my question is that teachers are always like encouraged to make their lectures fun, play, or like highly interactive. And I have witnessed few teachers that are very popular in USA. They jump in the class, throw the candies, and so it was like why knowledge is not a serious game now. It's always like it's sort of like a game. You have to develop a course of actions to drag your students and indulge in your topic, and then so why it is that? So it's about the modern era, or it's like the way our students are? So that's my question. Thank you.
इसमें तो बहुत बातें हो सकती हैं. आपने बहुत अच्छा सवाल पूछा है. देखें, there are performative aspects of teaching, right? There are some people who are performers and they do a great job, and that's why I call the ratings satisfaction ratings. Are you satisfying your audience? And some people who are very popular, who do these kinds of things, you said, get good ratings. ठीक है. लेकिन हमें जो देखना है वो ये है कि वो क्या सीख रहे हैं. Is the teacher doing things that is helping students to learn? And that is a very complex question. So I think this whole business of interactivity and engagement is important. I mean, but it doesn't mean it's the only thing we do to improve. I have sat in very dry, boring lectures that have changed my life. I mean, I heard an idea. It was a guy who was boring who gave the idea, but it changed my life. I mean, to me, I'll never forget that lecturer. I have seen other lecturers who have said very little. Silence can be a very powerful mediator for learning. So बहुत से हैं जो बोलते ही नहीं है. वो क्यों? इसलिए उनका ये पर्सपेक्टिव है कि आप बोलें. आप जो रिवील करेंगे, जो आपको पता है और आपको क्या नहीं पता है, और आप एक दूसरे को सिखाएंगे. इस तरह के भी तरीके हैं. तो इसमें तो इन्फिनिट कॉम्बिनेशंस हैं. इसका कोई वन साइज फिट्स ऑल नहीं है. अगर आप कंफर्टेबल नहीं है परफॉर्मेंस में तो नहीं करें बिल्कुल. कोई आपको nobody is compelling you to go and become a show person. This is not you're not putting on a show. What you're doing is you're trying to create curiosity, intellectual curiosity. You're asking them to ask good questions. You're giving them space to think. तो इसमें इतने मुख्तलिफ तरीके हैं. इसमें कोई one size fits all नहीं है. और आप वही करें. मैं तो आपको एक एडवाइस देता हूं. Wear the glove that fits your hand. ठीक है. आप वो पहने जो आपको हाथ में फिट आता है, और दूसरों का भूल जाएं. वो क्या कर रहे हैं, ये क्या कर रही है, वो भूल जाएं. आप खुद stay true to your own beliefs. And as long as you're focused on student learning, you're going to be a good teacher. Gee, maybe one more question with Dr. Aisha, and then I'll hand it back to you to close it up. And Suleiman, my apologies. I'm hogging all of the questions and airtime here, and you made the time to come here. Maybe you answer the next question.
It's perfectly fine. I think I'm also learning a lot, so it's all good. It's all good.
I have to leave for a class. Assalamu alaikum. I have to leave for a class. I just want to ask, what we get is the overall feedback of a class. So sometimes, there is biasness in the feedback of students, like Dr. Priya said, they might like teachers who award very good grades and who are not strict in their timelines of submitting assessments, who give a lot of relaxation. So how we identify that out of the overall feedback that we get from the student, which one is really fair, constructive, and which one is not, which one is biased, and why instead of just asking them some question, maybe 5 or 25, well, the more emphasis should be in their own comments and the opinion they give about the course and the teaching of the student, because what they think might not be in those questions, those 5 or 25 questions that we ask. Thank you very much.
Bilkul durust, bilkul durust. I mean, you're not restricted to only those questions. In fact, you raise a very important point that you should be asking, open-ended questions, if you like, throughout the semester. Why wait? When I still teach, but when I do my class, my first class is the most important class, and there is an evaluation after the first class. What did you particularly like that I did to help your learning, and what hindered your learning? मुझे इतना feedback मिलता है, और anonymous by the way. So अगर आप 5 मिनट लोगों को दे दें कि ये 2 मोटे सवाल आंसर कर ले, आपको शुरू से पता हो जाता है कि वो किधर हैं. They'll tell you very honestly. If you want honest feedback, they will give you feedback. Sometimes you can do it written, sometimes you do it with conversation. If you are showing interest that you care about their learning, they will respond to you. And you can use any instrument you like. You're not bound by student evaluations. You can get feedback any way you want, just like you're suggesting. So I would encourage that a lot. Jitni aapki relationship unke saath banegi based on interest, curiosity, trust, respect, especially respect, because there's a lot of power dynamics between teacher and student, and often the student feels उनको तो बोलने की मौका ही नहीं मिलता है, उनको बात करने का मौका नहीं मिलता है, उनको फीडबैक देने का मौका नहीं मिलता है, उनको जो उनके दिमाग में है, what learning is all about what the student does and what the student thinks, and this is what you're trying to find out. It's not about anything else. So to explore that, you have to open the door, you have to open the window, and you have to be able to accept those difficult conversations sometimes when they are honest with you and they tell you what they like and what they don't like. I think is tarah aap relationship jo banate hain students ke saath, those are the lifelong relationships that matter and last. What do you think, Suleiman? Suleiman, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I was on mute. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's a slow process. It's not a overnight change. It's not a switch on and off. It takes a while. And it comes from both ways. For us also, it was a slow process of really offering what we had, and then building this community where people thought that we're adding value, and slowly there'll be a bigger community who is ready to sort of give back on a larger scale. But I think it takes a while. It's not switch on and off.
Gee, absolutely, it is continuous.
Yeah.
So hand it back to you folks. I hope you enjoyed the talk and the discussion, and next time please visit Suleiman and us, and come and join in one of our workshops or activities. Otherwise, hope to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for talking about teaching excellence framework and talking about the tenure and promotion policies which actually support our institution's effort to make teaching count. It was a very enlightening and very interesting talk, and we hope that we will be in touch with one another. And thank you so much for taking out the time from your busy schedule. And I would also like to extend my thanks to all the participants who have participated in this workshop and have made this discussion more meaningful. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you. Bahut shukriya. Assalamu
Thank you,
alaikum.
Fadli. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Hafiz.